I want to say something, y'all. I'm tested positive for the P-Funk. I'll be in anybody's cup, and may your cup runneth over.
Wow, George hitting us with that mindset.
No, man.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
That was deep philosophical stuff.
Yeah, I get that and everything, but
Socrates' intellect.
George may be taking that a little bit too far there.
Crackpipe visions.
I like to be educated, but I'm so frustrated.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Music Mindset channel. I'm Mr. Mindset and stuff like that. Happy holidays if you're still in them. Tonight, we're going to get into the sort of godfather of funk, George Clinton, and his weird self. But the guy is great, man. He's creative, man. He's what makes funk, this modern funk, what it is. But before I get going, let me just say this real quick. Quick shout out to some of the new guys that jumped on board. You can see them on the screen right there. The newest is actually DKJ22 and User CQ7, and you know the rest of it and stuff like that. Hey, I appreciate you guys. Hey, I hope you all consider that. Help support the channel so we can keep going. But anyway, George Clinton, I think he's more than just a godfather. When I think of a godfather, I think of somebody who sits on top of the hill and tell everybody what to do. But George did a little bit more than that. He, to me, was like a referee of the game. The game was going on. He was making the calls and deciding what was going to happen, when and where. And that's how funk got to the level that it's at. Yeah, it was started back way before that in the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. But what George did, he took it to a new level. He was getting the players together. So hang around and let's get into that. George Clinton, the referee of funk. Yeah, I know some people see him as one of the godfathers, but some, like the New York Times, actually say he was the hippie of funk instead. Yet in reality, and what people with the music mindset will see, George refereed the funk along the way. And that distinction matters. Yep, refereeing is what George really did. The players played the game. The stars hit the jump shots. But George made the calls. He decided what counted, what didn't, what stayed in bounds, and what got whistled dead. In funk, George Clinton wasn't trying to outplay everybody. He was trying to control the game. People like DJ Khaled try to think like that. But this dude ain't no George Clinton by a long shot. Nah, George was literally born into the funk for real.
I was born in Kannapolis, North Carolina, an outhouse. My mother thought, the truth now, thought she had to go to the bathroom. So funk was predestined with me.
Free your mind and your ass will follow. That wasn't just a slogan of George's, that was the rule book. Funk to George wasn't just music. It was a lifestyle, an attitude, a way of seeing the world sideways. He didn't define funk by notes on a staff. He defined it by feel, by nerve, by whether it made your body react before your brain caught up. So yeah, George Clinton came straight out of the South in the 40s, raised on doo-wop harmonies and barbershop quartet voices. Before Parliament, before Funkadelic, before the Mothership, he was listening to groups like Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers.
Music coming to my life, that's something that I wanted to do, probably when I was like 12 years old.
He was thinking, that's it, that's the sound. Then Motown hit. Smooth, polished, precise, and cute. George loved it, but he didn't hear it the same way they did. Where Motown cleaned it up shiny, George heard it raw, rough edges, sweat still on it. And he didn't care if it fit the industry's idea of pretty, because George could only be George. That became Parliament, the platform. A little buck wild. They were kind of like Motown on crack, but it worked for a little label in Detroit. Yet for George, that wasn't enough. Because he knew there were other elements missing. Something louder, something freakier, something psychedelic. They had become like a black rock band to some, but he was now looking at the funk coming on scene too. Yet George realized something early on. Funk was more than just a song, and it didn't live in one band. It lived in people, ideas, personalities, weirdness, and if someone had something that might be funky, George wanted to hear it. That's when the game really opened up. By the early 70s, George was steadily cooking. Parliament had hooked up to Funkadelic and things were moving, the groove was flowing, with a wee bit of help from that acid, I might add too. And shortly after, that's when George had Eddie Hazel in the middle of the studio surrounded by Marshall amps, after he had told him to play a solo, as if he just got word that his mama had died, and then told shortly after that she was alive. That's deep. And Eddie harnessed that into the most iconic and emotionally charged 10-minute resonant guitar solos in rock funk history. Maggot brain. But in 1972, some new walk-on players came running onto the court out of nowhere. These were guys who had just been fired from James Brown's team after some internal chaos. Bootsy Collins, his brother Phelps, Catfish Collins, and the others didn't just bring the talent, they brought experience. They brought James Brown playing on the one, not as a theory, but as lived reality. George had heard the one before, everybody had, but now he had the players who could demonstrate it in real time, with authority. And unlike James Brown, George didn't run a dictatorship. He ran an open tryout. Anyone who could add to the groove was invited onto the floor. And this is what Bootsy and the others longed for. They got the chance to take Funkadelic to the next level, and them and George rode that out with a string of hits.
Can I get it on my butt butt? Everybody say, glide in your stride or dip in your hip and come on to the mothership.
This is George's referee mindset in action. He would have musicians sitting in corners, knocking out licks, chants, bass lines, riffs, nonsense phrases, noises that didn't even sound like music yet. And George would drift over and say, "Do that again, man. No judgment, everything gotta look at least once." His ears were open to all. But don't get it twisted. Studio time was game time, and it wasn't cheap. So not every idea made the cut. George might love your lick in rehearsal, love your chant in practice, love your vibe in the room, and still bench it when it didn't serve the recording. Whistle blown, foul called, possession changes. The referee had the final say. As George put it, "I'll take the funk wherever I can find it." But finding it didn't guarantee it survived. By the mid-70s, his musical universe had exploded with several offshoots and funk franchises, up to 50-plus people rotating through Parliament Funkadelic at different times. Guitarists, bass players, singers, writers, characters. Not a democracy, a controlled chaos. George wasn't trying to be the best musician or singer in the room. He was trying to assemble the best funk moment possible. And that's what he refereed. George once said, "If you hit a mistake, it's probably because you weren't funky enough to get away with it." But let's be clear, he got the biggest help with the funk from Neil Bogart at Casablanca Records. While other executives would have shut George and his craziness down, Bogart leaned in. He didn't just tolerate the madness, he made sure it got the funding it needed. Bogart was a white music executive who understood one thing very clearly: spectacle sells. He gave George Clinton something almost no one would have dared to give him: latitude. George once said, "They let us do what we wanted, and that's dangerous." Dangerous in the best way. Big budgets, wild stage shows, costumes, the mothership landing on stage. That's how funk reached arenas. That's how it reached white audiences, rock audiences, kids who didn't grow up on soul radio. The referee needed an arena and a game, and Bogart gave George the whole league. But let's not miss this. George's absurd ideas would never have worked for the majority without the images and visuals to match.
I am Sir Nosed, Lord of Funk.
And he got that help from Pedro Bell, out of Chicago, a visionary artist and illustrator who defined the visual identity and deep-rooted mythology of George Clinton's P-Funk collective. Funk wasn't just something you heard, it was something you saw. Without those visuals to go with it, the music might have sounded insane. Together, it became mythology. Keeping it real, George Clinton wasn't a prolific singer. He wasn't a flashy instrumentalist. Yet here he stands as a giant. Why? Because he controlled the game. He decided what funk was allowed to be. He encouraged chaos, then shaped it. He invited everyone in, then made the call when it was time to win. That's why referee of funk fits better than Godfather. The Godfather commands, the referee understands the rules so deeply that he knows when to break them and when to blow the whistle. And that's what George did, and is still doing today. Playing the same funk grooves, but in sit-down grandpa mode, though. That's how it goes, man, when you're the Godfather or the hippie or the referee of funk. George Clinton, man, he put some songs on the map that made funk what it is. And, you know, that's how people like Cameo and Ohio Players and all of those people, they got connected up with that type of funk and made them who they are. So George had a lot to do with what we hear on the radio these days, because a lot of hip hop took away from what he was responsible for getting on the air. But anyway, I hope you guys appreciate that. And I hope everything's going well. And I'll see you guys next time on the Music Mindset channel.